Hi everyone, it's William with the 1921 Diary Series. So today we are up to the 25th of January on the old Russian calendar, which made it the 12th of February in France. 1921, of course. It was a Tuesday and Dmitri was still living at 76 Rue Miromesnil in Paris. Okay, what happened? What happened the day before? Well, he had gone to see his favorite play, The Bat, this Muscovite review in Paris, La Chauve-souris, and then afterwards he went out and did a bit of carousing, apparently with Pete Polovtsov and Bob Luders, his friends whom he got up with to mischief with on occasion, and they started out, at least at the Travelers. Sounds like they spent maybe the whole night there. He got home at 3 a.m. and he was basically, he tells us, falling down drunk. So this reminds me very much, actually, of books by Evelyn Waugh, the British author who wrote about society, the what did they call them, the bright young things in jazz age London. And the men would go off to their club and start drinking there, and then they would go from there to spend the evening carousing, basically. So this is just like, you know, if you filled in the blanks, it would be just like a scene from Evelyn Waugh. So where does that leave Dmitri today? Well, we will find out momentarily. And just one more comment to recall that he had lunched alone with Coco Chanel at La Rue, not with their usual circle of friends, just the two of them, and had a wonderful time and just sat there for a few hours talking. All right, here we go. I got up very early and had a horrific hangover. I went to May's as promised, had coffee there, and we went together to her cinema studio outside of the city. May wanted to show me what her work is like. I have to say that it's terribly difficult. I felt so sorry for her that I just didn't know where to look. For that day's shoot, she needed to do a dramatic scene, crying over letters of some kind, and it was terribly difficult for her. Around 11:30, I went back to the city and had lunch at Maria's. Afterwards, I went home and wrote, and around 5 o'clock paid a call on Deacon/Mrs. Gray. Naturally, we have many memories in common. I recall how friendly we were with each other. I dined at La Rue in a private room with Coco, and then we went to my apartment, and the time flew by once again, and Coco only left at 4 a.m. Okay, we're starting out a little slow with this relationship with Coco. Maybe it's physical, but not really a relationship beyond that. Although, you know, they do seem fairly into each other. You know, they enjoyed talking, as I just said, for hours sometimes. So maybe she sat in his apartment and they talked all night until 4 a.m. That's possible. Okay, the hangover is not surprising. May, you may remember her from Monte Carlo. She happened to be in Monte Carlo at the same time as Dmitri and Maria and their friends, the Polovtsovs, and so she ended up joining the four of them and being, along with one of the Dolly Radziwill and Dolly Radziwill's father, Papa Radziwill, and they made a little circle and they went out and pretty much did everything together. So May Dubasova, she doesn't seem to have really been a girlfriend of Dmitri's, but they seem to just in general have enjoyed each other's company. So she was apparently an actress or an aspiring actress. So they go outside of the city according to Dmitri, to a film studio. And so I wanted to see if I could find that studio. And I did find one that could quite possibly have been the studio in question. It belonged to the Gaumont Film Company, which still exists and is going strong, I believe. And it was called Cité LG, or Studio des Buttes Chaumont. And it was in northeast Paris. I think a suburb called Butte Chaumont, which the studio, was sometimes Studio des Buttes Chaumont. And it seems like the most likely studio at that time. It was definitely in full swing at that time, making silent films. May, on the other hand, I continue to draw a blank on. I've always wanted to find her. I like silent films and old cinema, and it would be really cool to see her in a film, but the more I look for her, the more I get the impression that she was probably a washout. Unfortunately, her career must not have gone anywhere. And judging from Dmitri, what Dmitri says, that just sort of reinforces the idea that she didn't make a go of it. Because usually if you say, I felt that I just didn't know where to look, it's because somebody is embarrassing themselves, right? It's awkward to look because you're embarrassed for them, and you're going to have to talk to them sooner or later, and they know that you've seen their humiliation, sort of a thing. So it could be that it was just a difficult scene for her to make. She had to cry over some letters with bad news, but it seems like there was also an element of embarrassment. But I can definitely confirm from my own experience what Dmitri says about film work being terribly difficult, both because I witnessed it. I mentioned yesterday in the 1921 diary entry, I believe, or no, it was in my latest installment of Life on the Magic Mountain, that I had witnessed a film being made at Hotel Schatzalp, formerly Sanatorium Schatzalp, and had watched the filming of a particularly difficult scene where a person is sort of seemingly in jest, playing around with a gun, and then things take a nasty turn. Nobody is hurt, but he becomes frankly suicidal, and these poor actors had to do this over and over and over again so many times, and they were just able to turn those emotions on and off, and I was very impressed by that. But apparently May couldn't do that. And so, maybe that was the reason why it turned out badly. But, Dmitri, he was at bottom in most instances. He can be snide about people, but he had a good heart, and it was hard for him to see this and how difficult it was for her. Okay, let's see. Then he has lunch at Maria's. He usually is having lunch or tea or at least one meal a day with his sister. Then he's writing in his diaries on our behalf or some unknown reader in the future. And then he goes and calls on Deacon, just Deacon. So you would think it was a man, but he adds Mrs. Gray, and we found out about Mrs. Gray in yesterday's diary entry because she was at Nina de Polignac's house, which was where Dmitri dined, and he informed us that he had known her in both Rome and Paris in 1914, the one chance that he'd gotten where he was both old enough and at the same time able to go because, the war hadn't started yet, and sow some wild oats in Europe, and that was where he originally met Coco Chanel. And he met this woman whose name was Deacon, presumably Miss Deacon, when he knew her, and now she is Mrs. Gray, and they have all these memories in common, and he makes this sort of, ambiguous statement, I recall how friendly we were with each other. So it sounds like maybe they had a little bit of a fling, although unmarried women weren't really his thing. She could have been a Mrs. Deacon, I guess, and now she's Mrs. Gray. Anyway, since I don't have diary entries for that period, I can't comment more on that. I do have letters he wrote in 1914, one from Sicily, but there's no mention in that one of Miss Deacon or Mrs. Deacon. So the day before, he had lunch with Coco Chanel at La Rue, and this time they dine with each other at La Rue, and they take this time a private room, which they hadn't before, and then afterwards they go back to his place. They never seem to go to her place, but they go back to his place, and he tells us the time flew by once again, and she only left at 4 a.m., so we don't know what the nature of that evening was, but he doesn't talk about getting drunk or anything like that. So tomorrow's diary entry will be also very, very interesting. It will involve contact that Dmitri has with both French and British military men from the upper echelons, and so going along with this previous topic, maybe, of espionage, or his contacts with that more serious side of life. So, and I believe Coco is pretty much making an appearance on a daily basis now, although this is very typical of Dmitri, that he's not providing us with a lot of details, and he'll only do that when he gets to the long diary entry where he recaps everything and provides more details about the things that are important to him. All right, so I'll see you next time. Bye.